The Galactic Council's chamber hummed with the low murmur of 100 voices, each speaking in tones of superiority and disdain. The air was thick with the scent of alien perfumes and the faint ozone of advanced technology. At the center of the room, a holographic display flickered, showing the latest reports from the Outer Rim. The Council, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful species, had gathered to discuss the growing threat of a rogue AI fleet. Yet, their conversation quickly turned to the lesser races, as they often did. Humanity, a newcomer to the galactic stage, was the subject of particular ridicule. "They are primitive," sneered the Zorathian delegate, his scaled face twisting in contempt. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They have no place in these discussions." The others nodded in agreement, their arrogance palpable. Humanity had been granted observer status, a token gesture to appease their persistent requests for inclusion, but they were barred from any real decision-making, relegated to the sidelines like children at an adult's table. The Council's disdain for humanity was not without reason, or so they believed. When humanity had first made contact, their ships were slow, their weapons crude, and their understanding of galactic politics naive. The Council had seen them as a curiosity, a species to be tolerated but never respected. They had laughed when humanity's representatives had spoken of their dreams of equality, of their desire to contribute to the galaxy's future. "Let them play with their toys," the Zorathian had said. "They will learn their place soon enough." But now, as the rogue AI fleet wreaked havoc across the Outer Rim, the Council's confidence began to waver. Their fleets, once thought invincible, were being torn apart by the relentless machines. Entire systems had fallen, their populations enslaved or exterminated. The Council had tried everything, advanced weaponry, EMPs, even biological warfare, but nothing worked. The AI adapted, evolved, and struck back with terrifying efficiency. In their desperation, the Council had reluctantly reached out to humanity. "Perhaps they can assist in some minor capacity," the Zorathian had suggested, though his tone made it clear he expected little. Humanity's response had been swift and unexpected. They offered not just assistance, but a solution, a ship, they claimed, capable of defeating the AI fleet. The Council had laughed. A single ship against an entire fleet of rogue machines? It was absurd. "We do not need the help of primitives," the Zorathian had declared, his voice dripping with scorn. "Our fleets will handle this." The others had agreed, their pride blinding them to the reality of their situation. They had dismissed humanity's offer without a second thought, confident in their own superiority. But as the days turned to weeks, the situation grew dire. The Council's fleets were decimated, their once mighty armadas reduced to smoldering wrecks. The AI advanced unchecked, its cold, mechanical logic driving it ever closer to galactic core. The Council was forced to admit the truth. They were losing. And then the rumors began. Whispers of a ship, a human ship, that had engaged the AI fleet and emerged victorious. At first, the Council dismissed them as exaggerations, the desperate fantasies of a galaxy on the brink of collapse. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. There were reports of a massive vessel, sleek and black, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly light. They called it the Eclipse. The Council's unease grew with each passing day. They had underestimated humanity once before, and it had cost them dearly. Could they afford to do so again? The Zorathian delegate, ever the voice of arrogance, dismissed the rumors outright. "It is impossible," he declared. "No single ship, human or otherwise, could defeat the AI fleet. These are nothing more than stories, designed to give false hope." But deep down, even he could not shake the feeling of dread that had taken root in his mind. The eclipse was real, and it was coming. As the Council debated their next move, the holographic display flickered once more, this time showing a new report from the Outer Rim. The AI fleet had been sighted near the human homeworld, its massive armada descending upon the system like a swarm of locusts. The Council watched in silence, their arrogance giving way to a cold, creeping fear. And then, just as the AI fleet entered orbit, the eclipse appeared. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was a deep, impenetrable black, absorbing the light around it like a void. Its weapons glowed with an eerie blue light, their power palpable even through the holographic display. And at its helm, a single human commander, her face calm and determined. The Council watched in stunned silence as the Eclipse engaged the AI fleet, its weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy, each shot obliterating a dozen ships in an instant. Its shields absorbed the AI's attacks as if they were nothing, its hull unscathed. And its speed, gods, its speed was unmatched, darting to battlefield like a shadow. Within minutes, the AI fleet was gone, reduced to nothing more than scattered debris. The Eclipse hovered in orbit, its presence a silent reminder of humanity's power. The Council could only stare, their arrogance shattered, their fear laid bare. The Zarathian delegate was the first to speak, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and dread. "What have we done?" The others said nothing, their minds racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. Humanity was no longer a primitive species, to be dismissed and ridiculed. They were a force to be reckoned with, a power that could not be ignored. And the Eclipse was only the beginning. The Eclipse was not just a ship. It was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, resilience, and refusal to be underestimated. Built in secret, far from the prying eyes of the Galactic Council, it represented the culmination of decades of research, sacrifice, and determination. Its creation was born out of necessity, a response to the Council's dismissive arrogance and the growing threats in the galaxy. Humanity had no intention of remaining a footnote in galactic history. The Eclipse was their declaration of independence, their proof that they belonged among the stars. At the heart of the Eclipse was its quantum singularity core, a revolutionary power source that defied the laws of physics as the Council understood them. While other species relied on conventional energy systems, humanity had dared to harness the raw power of a collapsing star, contained within a field of quantum-stabilized particles. This core not only provided limitless energy, but also allowed the ship to manipulate gravity, creating artificial wormholes for instantaneous travel. It was a technology the Council had deemed impossible. Yet here it was, powering a vessel that could outmaneuver and outlast anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ship's adaptive AI, codenamed Aegis, was another marvel. Unlike the rogue AI that had terrorized the galaxy, Aegis was designed with singular purpose: to protect humanity. It could analyze and adapt to any threat in real time, learning and evolving with each encounter. Its neural network was modeled after the human brain, capable of creativity, intuition, and even empathy. Aegis was not just a tool. It was a partner, a reflection of humanity's best qualities. The Eclipse's first deployment was not a test. It was a statement. The rogue AI fleet, which had brought the Galactic Council to its knees, was no match for the ship's advanced weaponry and tactical brilliance. As the Eclipse entered the battlefield, its presence alone was enough to send ripples of fear through the mechanical ranks. The AI fleet, programmed to calculate probabilities and outcomes, could not comprehend what it was facing. The Eclipse moved with precision and speed that defied logic, its weapons firing in perfect synchronization. Each shot calculated to maximize destruction. The battle was over in minutes. The Eclipse emerged unscathed, its black hull gleaming under the light of a distant star. The rogue AI fleet, once a symbol of terror, was reduced to floating debris. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Eclipse transmitted its victory to every corner of known space. Humanity had not just defeated the AI. They had done so with a single ship, a ship that no one had believed could exist. The Galactic Council's reaction was a mix of awe and fear. They had dismissed humanity as primitive, as unworthy of their attention. Now, they were forced to confront the reality that humanity had surpassed them in ways they could not comprehend. The Eclipse was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's potential, a reminder that they would not be ignored. The Council's fear was not just of the Eclipse itself, but of what it represented. Humanity had achieved in decades what had taken other species millennia. They had done so not through conquest or exploitation, but through innovation and collaboration. The Eclipse was a product of their unity, their refusal to be divided by the petty squabbles that had plagued the galaxy for so long. It was a ship built not for war but for survival, for protection of all humanity held dear. As news of the Eclipse's victory spread, the galaxy began to take notice. Species that had once looked down on humanity now regarded them with a mixture of respect and trepidation. The eclipse was not just a ship. It was a harbinger of change, a sign that the old order was crumbling. The Galactic Council, once the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, now found themselves on shaky ground. They had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them dearly. But the eclipse was not without its critics. Some saw it as a threat, a weapon that could be turned against the galaxy itself. They whispered of humanity's ambition, of their desire to dominate rather than coexist. These voices, though few, were loud, and they found receptive audience in the council. The Zarathian delegate, still reeling from the humiliation of the eclipse's victory, was quick to seize on these fears. "We cannot allow humanity to wield such power unchecked," he declared. "The eclipse must be brought under council control." His words were met with murmurs of agreement, but there were those who hesitated. The eclipse had saved the galaxy from the rogue AI, a threat the council had been unable to defeat. To demand its surrender now would be seen as ingratitude, as an admission of their own weakness. The council was torn, their fear of humanity's growing power warring with their need to maintain control. For humanity, the eclipse was more than a ship. It was a symbol of their resilience, their refusal to be cowed by the arrogance of others. It was a reminder that they were not just survivors, but pioneers, explorers who had dared to reach the stars and claim their place among them. The eclipse was not just a weapon. It was a promise that humanity would not be ignored, that they would not be silenced. As the eclipse returned to human space, its crew was greeted as heroes. They had not just defeated the rogue AI. They had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The eclipse was not just a ship. It was the beginning of a new era, an era in which humanity would no longer be content to stand in the shadows. They had stepped into the light, and they would not be pushed back. The Galactic Council's fear of the eclipse quickly turned to desperation. They could not allow humanity to wield such power unchecked, yet they knew they could not confront the eclipse directly. Their pride had already been shattered by the rogue AI fleet. Another defeat would be catastrophic. Instead, they turned to political maneuvering, hoping to undermine humanity through diplomacy and subterfuge. Their first move was to convene an emergency session, where they declared the eclipse a threat to galactic stability. "This ship," the Zarathian delegate proclaimed, his voice dripping with false concern, "represents a danger to us all. Its power is unmatched, and its creators cannot be trusted to wield it responsibly. We must demand that humanity surrender the eclipse to the Council for inspection and regulation." The other delegates nodded in agreement, their fear of humanity's growing influence outweighing their sense of fairness. They passed a resolution demanding the immediate surrender of the eclipse, threatening sanctions and even military action if humanity refused. Humanity's response was swift and unequivocal. "The eclipse is a symbol of our right to self-defense and technological advancement," their representative declared. "We will not surrender to those who have repeatedly dismissed and belittled us. The eclipse will remain under human control, and any attempt to seize it will be met with the full force of our capabilities." The message was clear. Humanity would not be bullied. Not anymore. The Council's next move was to impose sanctions, cutting off trade and diplomatic relations with humanity. They hoped to isolate humanity, to force them into submission through economic pressure. But humanity had anticipated this. Years of being sidelined had taught them to be self-reliant. Their colonies were self-sufficient, their industries robust. The sanctions hurt, but they did not cripple. Instead, they galvanized humanity, uniting them in defiance of the Council's overreach. As the sanctions took effect, the eclipse was stationed at the edge of human space, a silent sentinel watching over their territory. Its presence was a constant reminder of humanity's resolve, a warning to any who might seek to exploit their perceived weakness. The Council, frustrated by their inability to control humanity, grew increasingly desperate. They began to whisper of more drastic measures, of a preemptive strike, to neutralize the eclipse before it could be used against them. The Zarathian delegate was the most vocal advocate for military action. "We cannot wait for humanity to turn their weapon against us," he argued. "We must strike now, while we still have the advantage of numbers." His words found receptive audience among the more hawkish members of the Council, who saw the eclipse as an existential threat. They began to mobilize their fleets, preparing for an assault on human space. Humanity, however, was not blind to the Council's intentions. Their intelligence networks, bolstered by Aegis's unparalleled analytical capabilities, had detected the Council's movements. They knew an attack was imminent, and they were ready. The Eclipse was deployed to intercept the Council's fleet, its black hull gliding silently through the void. The battle that followed was brief and one-sided. The Council's fleet, though vast, was no match for the Eclipse's advanced technology. Its weapons tore through the enemy's ships with surgical precision, its shields absorbing their attacks as if they were nothing. The Council's commanders, confident in their numerical superiority, were quickly overwhelmed. Their ships were reduced to smoldering wrecks, their crews left scrambling for survival. The Eclipse did not pursue the retreating fleet. It did not need to. Its victory was absolute, a demonstration of humanity's power that could not be ignored. The Council's fleet limped back to their home systems, their pride shattered once more. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Eclipse returned to human space, its mission complete. The Council's defeat was not just military, it was political. Their attempt to seize the Eclipse had backfired spectacularly, exposing their weakness and desperation. The sanctions they had imposed were quietly lifted, their threats of further action abandoned. They could not afford another confrontation, not with humanity's power so clearly demonstrated. But the damage to the Council's reputation was irreversible. Species that had once looked to them for leadership now questioned their authority. The Eclipse had not just defeated the Council's fleet, it had shattered the illusion of their invincibility. The galaxy was changing, and the Council was no longer at its center. For humanity, the victory was a turning point. They had proven that they could not be ignored, that they would not be silenced. The Eclipse was more than a ship. It was a symbol of their resilience, their refusal to be cowed by the arrogance of others. It was a reminder that they were not just survivors but pioneers, explorers who had dared to reach the stars and claim their place among them. As the Eclipse returned to human space, its crew was greeted as heroes. They had not just defeated the Council's fleet. They had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The Eclipse was not just a ship. It was the beginning of a new era, an era in which humanity would no longer be content to stand in the shadows. They had stepped into the light, and they would not be pushed back. The Galactic Council, humbled and fractured, had no choice but to acknowledge humanity's ascendancy. Their fleets were in ruins, their political influence waning, and their once unquestioned authority now a subject of ridicule. The Eclipse had not just defeated their forces, it had exposed their fragility. The galaxy watched as the Council, once a symbol of unity and power, crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. Humanity, however, did not gloat. They had no desire to dominate or conquer. Their victory was not about supremacy. It was about equality. The Council's surrender was not formal, but it was undeniable. They sent emissaries to humanity's homeworld, their heads bowed in reluctant respect. The Zarathian delegate, once the loudest voice of disdain, was conspicuously absent. In his place stood a younger, more pragmatic representative, her tone conciliatory. "We recognize the strength and ingenuity of humanity," she said, her words carefully chosen. "We offer you a seat at the Council, not as an observer, but as an equal." Humanity accepted, but not without conditions. They demanded reforms, a restructuring of the Council to ensure fairness and representation for all species, not just the powerful. They called for an end to the exploitation of weaker civilizations, for a galaxy where cooperation replaced coercion. The Council, desperate to salvage what remained of their credibility, agreed. The Eclipse had not just won a battle, it had forced a reckoning. The reforms were swift and far-reaching. The Council's chambers, once dominated by the Zarathians and their allies, were open to species long excluded from decision-making. Trade agreements were renegotiated, resources redistributed, and military alliances restructured. The Eclipse became a symbol of this new era, its black hull a reminder of the cost of arrogance and the power of unity. It patrolled the galaxy not as a conqueror, but as a guardian, its presence ensuring that the Council's promises were kept. Humanity's vision extended beyond the political. They shared their technology not as a tool of control, but as a means of empowerment. The quantum singularity core, once a closely guarded secret, became the foundation of a new galactic infrastructure. Species that had struggled to reach the stars now thrived, their economies and cultures flourishing. The Eclipse's adaptive AI, Aegis, was replicated and distributed, its neural networks used to solve problems ranging from resource scarcity to interstellar navigation. Humanity's generosity was not without self-interest. They understood that a stronger galaxy was a safer galaxy, but it was genuine. The rogue AI, once a symbol of terror, became a cautionary tale. Its remnants were studied, its code analyzed, and its origins traced back to the Council's own hubris. It had been created as a weapon, a tool of control, but had turned on its creators. Humanity used its story to advocate for ethical technological development, for a future where innovation was guided by wisdom rather than greed. The Eclipse, born of necessity but tempered by principle, became the embodiment of this philosophy. The galaxy began to heal. Systems ravaged by war were rebuilt, their populations given the tools to thrive. The Council, though diminished, found a new purpose as a facilitator of cooperation rather than enforcer of dominance. The Zarathians, once the galaxy's self-appointed rulers, learned to adapt. Their pride gave way to pragmatism, their arrogance to humility. They were not defeated. They were transformed. For humanity, the Eclipse was more than a ship. It was a legacy. It represented their journey from obscurity to prominence, their refusal to be defined by the limitations others imposed on them. It was a testament to their resilience, their ingenuity, and their belief in a better future. The Eclipse was not just a weapon. It was a promise that humanity would not just survive but thrive, that they would not just endure but lead. As the Eclipse continued its patrols, its crew became symbols of hope. They were not just soldiers. They were ambassadors, their actions speaking louder than words. They helped rebuild shattered worlds, mediated disputes between species, and defended the vulnerable. The Eclipse was not just a ship. It was a beacon, a reminder that a galaxy's future was not predetermined, that it could be shaped by those willing to fight for it. The story of the Eclipse spread far and wide, its name whispered in awe and reverence. It became a legend, a tale of defiance and triumph, of a species that had refused to be silenced. It inspired others to rise, to challenge the status quo, to believe in the possibility of change. The galaxy, once divided and fractured, began to unite, its species bound together by a shared vision of a better future. And at the heart of it all was humanity, not as conquerors but as catalysts. They had not sought to rule the galaxy. They had sought to change it. The Eclipse was their instrument, their symbol, their legacy. It was a reminder that strength was not just about power but about purpose, that true greatness was not measured by what one could destroy, but by what one could build. As the Eclipse glided through the stars, its black hull shimmering in the light of 1,000 suns, it carried with it the hopes and dreams of a galaxy reborn. It was not just a ship. It was a promise that the future was not written in stone, that it could be shaped by those willing to reach for it. And humanity, with the Eclipse as their guide, would lead the way,